So, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is the sequel to 2020's Sonic the Hedgehog, which continues the adventures of the blue alien who looks like a hedgehog. Um, Now I wasn't all that impressed by the first Sonic film, but I gotta admit, I kinda dug what this sequel is doing. Um, it improves on kind of the some of the issues I had with the first film, which is that I didn't really feel like the dynamic was quite there for the character. I didn't really feel like the plot was all that engaging for Sonic trying to find a way home. Um, but I was really bothered by the product placement as well. The good news is that there's been some improvements with the sequel, which kind of made me feel okay with it more than anything. So Sonic once again is voiced by Ben Schwartz. And I kind of dug the focus on Sonic here with the realization that he has to be a better superhero. He thinks of himself as being like, this cool speedster who can save the day, but he ends up causing property damage. So all that damage that happened in the last Sonic movie, where he basically blew up most of San Francisco there with Robotnik. I know that Robotnik blew up a lot of stuff, but he realizes that, property damage isn't going to fly. Especially since, you don't have Robotnik anymore. You've got to take some responsibility and you got to grow up. I like that angle because then it actually has like a decent, moral to it. And this lesson has to be learned is refuted by Tom, the human that has taken Sonic, played by James Marsden, who it seems is kind of like shoved to the side more in this film. And it's mostly because he takes like a trip to Hawaii for most of the film. But, and I mean, he does play a little bit more of a role later, but you can definitely feel like the focus here is all on Sonic and the other alien creatures here. So the other alien creatures, you have Tails, who shows up, voiced by Colleen O'Shaughnessy. And Tails is basically the eager fan. Tails shows up to say, hey, Sonic, there's a Chaos Emerald on Earth, and it has ultimate power, and you don't want it to fall into the wrong hands, so I want to go with you on this adventure. I found it kind of odd, though, that that Tails has apparently been spying on Sonic and thinks of Sonic as, like, just loves everything about Sonic. It's basically an excuse so that Tails knows everything about Sonic. So that when he can show up, he can say, oh, classic Sonic. Tails, I didn't really find that interesting as a character. I think Tails is more interesting as both the cute mascot and to act as a vessel for Sonic to show some responsibility, because they really do shift the focus here to say that, oh, Sonic has to take responsibility for other people's lives. Well, okay, so here's Tails. Here's someone who idolizes you, and you gotta, live up to your name and be a better influence, obviously. The other alien creature we have is, of course, Knuckles, the red echidna, voiced by Idris Elba. Knuckles is bound by revenge because apparently on Sonic's home world, his people were at war with Sonic, and his father died in an encounter with the owl tribe, I guess. Sonic's owl mother shows up in a hologram to deliver exposition and become another herald. So basically, the Jor-El of these Sonic films. Although I found it odd that, I guess, the Obi-Wan. Like, in the last film, we barely saw any of Sonic's owl mother, and she's referred to as, the Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I mentioned that, oh, good thing Sonic told us that, because she's on screen for, a minute? So, we'll take Sonic's word for it here. She kind of feels more like Jor-El, though. Like, she shows up, and she gives you the exposition on what to do for this film. But, but when Knuckles shows up, Knuckles is the funniest character, by far, and I think what makes him work so well is that he is the fish out of water here. Like, when Sonic showed up on Earth, he took to it pretty quick and understood. Like, I don't know specifically how long Sonic has... I'm sure it was mentioned briefly, but Sonic has basically become accustomed to Earth. Tails has apparently studied Earth as well and can translate all these languages, so he's, up to date on everything. Knuckles is more interesting because he's, the fish out of water alien here. Who basically gets in, a lot of funny lines with, misinterpreting stuff, direct messaging and ice cream and desserts and stuff like that. All these funny little bits with him. And again, it helps that Idris Elba plays this role straight. He's not trying for laughs here as much as, just playing the fish out of water, the straight man who misinterprets everything. And he's also a bit of like the semi-reluctant villain who, of course, he's bound by revenge, and of course he meets Sonic and then realizes Sonic takes responsibility, and then they team up and they fight Dr. Robotnik in the end. So yes, Dr. Robotnik is back again, played by Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey is hamming it up again. He's bringing all the energy he has to this film, and I think that's probably the best thing I would say about this film is that everyone is giving all the energy they have here. Jim Carrey, of course, doesn't slack here. He gets all like the most wittiest zingers that he can throw at the screen. Although I was kind of hoping that there'd be a little bit more commentary from him, because the thing is, like, he'll make all these pop culture references. Like when he encounters like some other aliens, he makes references to The Day After Tomorrow. But then once you get to the third act of the film, which basically turns into your standard adventure film, like at one point to get to the Chaos Emerald, they have to navigate a maze of death traps, and it's all the cliche death traps you expect. You know, like you step on a block and like like a guillotine will come out. Not a guillotine, what's it called? A pendulum. You'll have like the rolling boulder, the classic Indiana Jones trap. You would think that Robotnik would have some commentary on this to like comment on how cliche this stuff is or how it reminds him of other pop culture stuff. But no, it's like, it's weird. Like it's somewhere between like restrained and not admitting to how par for the course this type of adventure feels. Because the adventure of finding the Chaos Emerald is pretty standard globetrotting. Like Sonic and Tails go to Siberia. They try to track a compass. They encounter a tavern of all these different Russians. Sorry, all these different like Siberians who have like this like very odd way of trying to like start fights and all that. Stuff that we've seen in the previous Sonic film. You have a temple that crumbles. You have like a chase down a mountain. And it just feels very standard. Although, all that being said, where the film does actually have some subversion is when it gets to the second act and Sonic kind of like leaves the film. And at that point in the film, Tom's wife's sister, Rachel, played by Natasha Rothwell, takes over the film. Because her wedding not only gets crashed by Sonic, but then gets infiltrated by a secret military operation, and she basically takes over. She basically gets revenge for her wedding being ruined, and you know what? I'm all for it. Like, Sonic is barely in this part of the film, and it's hilarious. Like, Natasha Rothwell, who plays Rachel here, eats up the screen. She fights back. She has, like, like I said that Robotnik has the wittiest lines, but I actually kind of like Rothwell's lines a lot more. She has like this great like cynicism to her where she basically like fights back. She's not a passenger in this story. Like she basically takes charge of the second act to the point where one of my favorite moments in the film is where she slams like one of the electric carts into a speaker system that explodes, while she just like walks away from the explosion guzzling champagne. That scene's genuinely funny. Like it didn't make me laugh out loud, but it did make me smirk. It's like, okay, you know what? This is deliciously absurd. I love this scene. But then get used to not seeing her again for the rest of the film, because after that, basically Tom and his wife Maddie, played by Tika Sumpter again, they basically have to come in and be, the people who will stand by Sonic. Again, Tom saves the day by driving a truck onto the scene. Just like in the last one. There's a lot of similarities here. And yeah, I guess the parts of the film that I commended for is like more for what it doesn't do. It doesn't make as many dated references to like hipsters and stuff like that. The product placement isn't as aggressive by showing you Zillow, and talking a lot about Olive Garden. Although, I'm not a big fan of them calling the general the Olive Garden general at that point, but whatever. At least, like, when they have the product placement of Oreos, Sonic doesn't have to say Oreos by name. Like, there's a scene where he's got to go to the store and grab some junk food, and at least he doesn't say, oh, I'm out of Oreos, gotta go buy Oreos, in this shot that shows them. And probably one of the weirdest things I think about the product placement is, like, at one point, the adventure takes them to the Four Seasons in Hawaii, and they really have to mention the Four Seasons by name twice, and and stress the fact that they have Mai Tais there. Quite the product placement for a film aimed at families, but whatever. It's not as bad as like the Olive Garden or the Zillow thing. It's not as bad as that. It's still not good, but it's better. Like, it's trying. So yeah, I think the film, at least, like, it feels more like an adventure film than it did the fish out of water tale that the first film wanted to be, but didn't quite muster because Sonic's already used to Earth, so the fish out of water angle isn't really interesting. Because then you're just watching a character just run around making pop culture references, and basically, like, it felt like the only thing that was fish out of water in that film was like Sonic couldn't read maps, which is odd because he's literally looking at a map for like the different worlds for like his ring, but apparently he doesn't know where San Francisco is. Which is weird. It felt like they really had to like force in that fish out of water buddy road trip film into that film. And here it feels like a standard adventure where it's like, okay, I can believe into this. The problem is I feel like there's a competition to have, like, you know, the human characters in here. Some people have brought this up, like the human characters don't seem as interesting here. And I think the biggest problem with that is there's the scene where Sonic and Tails are going over the exposition of looking over the map and trying to find different parts of the world to get to the Chaos Emerald. And while they're doing this, the stand-in sheriff for the Green Hills, for the Green Hills town where Sonic and Tom reside, basically tries to provide some commentary. And make some funny jokes. Like, oh, you're looking for this alien called Knuckles? I knew a Knuckles in school. Man, hope it's not that bully. And Sonic and Tails just kind of look on like, oh, okay, that doesn't really fit into our adventure, but okay, you're trying for laughs, sure. I guess, like I said, that's the best thing I'd say about the film. It does have energy. Everyone's trying here. It's just that they're kind of given like a very, very standard adventure film here, complete with the big climax where Robotnik gains this ultimate power and he gets this giant robot. And Sonic, you think, is going to die at one point, but then doesn't die and, you know, amasses this Super Saiyan power. I know it's Super Sonic, whatever. Come after me in the comments, don't care. But the thing is, it still does, like, the kind of, the thing with the last film that didn't really annoy me so much as just made me go like, oh, okay, just kind of shrug, which is the references to all the video games. So honestly, you have like references to the Sonic 2 game, obviously with Tails coming in with the plane. They set that up early. But then, like, you know, like there's just like a lot of small references. Like the coffee shop is called the Mean Bean, which is a reference to the Sega game Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. It's like, oh, okay, I get the reference. It's kind of cute. Like it's funny, I guess. But it's more funny in the fact that, like, oh, okay, I recognize this from the games. And then there's like little things like Tom's ringtone is the Green Hill Zone for Green Hill Zone music for some reason. All these tiny little references that a lot of Sega fans will feel vindicated for. And just for like full disclosure here, you know, I grew up with the Sega Genesis. I was all about Sonic. I recognize the references to all the games. And I'm still just kind of like, okay, I get all the references and just kind of shrug like, okay, you're still just giving me a standard adventure here. It's a little bit better than the last film, but it's a kind of par for the course film with all the crumbling temples and the chases and the boulders and the death trap mazes and this like underwater temple and all this stuff I've seen before. And I can't help but feel like if I was trying to imagine, like, if I were a kid, back then, like, if this Sonic film came out when I was like at like the age that it's going to appeal to a lot of kids the most, would I really like the film? And I think I might for this type of, because like for as much as this adventure film didn't do anything for me, I thought back to the 90s when I was really big into Sonic, and I thought if I saw this film, you know what, I would actually really like it. With time, I might not dig it as much. But I think for like a lot of kids who go see this film, they'll actually kind of really dig it. And I hope that, like, you know, just to have like an action adventure film for kids, I think is pretty neat. And especially for like a film that, you know, with like a franchise that they're still into all this time, which is strange to think that, you know, like there are all these franchises like Pokemon and Ninja Turtles that have been around since the 90s and they're never going to stop. But I thought, like, you know, on that level, the film's okay. You know, a lot of people were really digging on the film. They were loving it. So even though I wasn't as big into it, I can recognize that a lot of people do love it. And thankfully, it's not as bad as it could have been. It could have been worse with the product placement. It could have been way more mixed with its messaging and its in the morality that it's trying to push here, which it's not. It's very much on point here. So like most of the film on the passive level, it works. It's fine matinee entertainment, and I think that's like the best thing I can say about it.